Here we go. I know you're all nice people who never ever say anything bad about anyone, but I don't know. I have kids in sports, so I usually say something bad about somebody. Usually the referee, which is crazy because I referee a lot, and so referees are like the worst fans because we're like, oh, he should have got that call. It's not fair. You can't see what they can see, right? Don't worry, we're not judging them too hard. I hope. Anyway, so I have just a basic little presentation to put up there. Again, just pulled from I pull it from the textbook publisher's 80 slide PowerPoint and try to reduce it down to about 5 or 6 that really matter. But before I do that, any kind of general questions? So not like question specific, like homework question specific questions yet. We'll get to that. But any general questions about just general content this week that I could try to answer?
I have one.
Yeah.
I noticed in our, gosh, now I don't know what it's called, our group where we teach each other, there aren't any videos in my group. And so I'm wondering, to each their own. If the person didn't want to upload a video, that's their own thing. But as far as the accountability part at the end, what would you suggest? Like, should I make a contribution, and what would that be?
Yeah,
and anyway, what to do in that
good question. So typically, I'll just let you know. So typically, what I try to do is by Wednesday, if somebody hasn't shared something, I'll borrow one from somebody in another group and share it. I just haven't got to that yet this week. In my mind, if you go in there and nobody's put anything, then you've done everything you can. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not your job to. I mean, great if you're like, you know what I want to do? I'm going to go and do that problem for them and post it. But I don't think that that's your responsibility. And so I would have no problem with you putting that you fully participated in that little quiz at the end of the week. But
Fox,
yes.
I had the same thing happen in my group, and I just used that time to ask the questions that I needed help with, not specifically for the assignment that was to be posted, but just something that I was struggling with to see if somebody could help with that. So I still use the discussion board, not specifically for the assigned project or one that's supposed to be up there, but just one for help on something in general.
Yeah, and for sure you can do that. Although the downside to that is there's only about 8 to 10 people in any given group, whereas if you went to the course, weekly discussion, you would have more people seeing it, perhaps. I know there's probably some people who look at that every time they see something pop up and try to answer, and then I know there's other people that probably just pretend it's not there. Like kind of like if you don't see the speedometer, then you're not speeding, or something. So no, I think it's great to use the time. And like I said, part of that's on me. I try to by Wednesday. It's just been a busy week and I haven't. It takes some doing to go find a good one, copy it over, and then put it in the ones where people didn't post. So thanks, Leilani. I think that's a good suggestion of how we could still get the most out of that space. Any other general questions? All right, good. So let me. So is my sound quality okay? So I usually use a little ear mic, and it's a little more unidirectional. And right now I'm just using the mic on my camera. My daughter's in home MTC, and she stole my good microphone because she's sitting at a computer all day. If any of you have been to the MTC, imagine trying to do that in your home with your brothers going around you, and your dad telling your brothers, stop listening to that or watching to that because she's in the MTC right now. It's not distracting at all for her. Anyway, so let me bring up a presentation, a little one out of the book.
Sound quality is fine.
All right.
And as a father myself, I'd probably encourage your boys to listen and help them prepare to be missionaries for the future.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, that's awesome. In theory.
Not that they would do it, but they might actually stay away if they're encouraged to stay.
Maybe that's true. No, they're really great boys. These are my babies. These are my 3 youngest that are still at home, and they're really great kids. But like they go to mission prep dutifully, but like, I think like most of us have this like limit of how much church we can take, and then we're just like, that's enough church for this week, and then that's not right. But I've always said I don't want Wednesday night activities for the youth to be another church meeting. I want them to have an element of fun that maybe isn't found in sacrament meeting, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe we should always be serious and have them all sit with their hands folded while we lecture at them on Wednesday nights or something. It'd be great. Anyway, finding that balance is challenging, right? As a parent and as a leader too. All right, let's see. So I'm gonna bring this up. Don't get me wrong, I love a good sacrament meeting, about once a week. Okay. I just thought probably like in my like end of course ratings are gonna be like, this guy, he doesn't like sacrament meeting. What the heck? He's terrible. He's a horrible person. All right.
Yeah, you just got that box checked that says, is uplifting and encouraging of my spiritual development.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My daughter was on there talking to her MTC companion, and they were talking about how something sucked. And I'm like, missionaries don't say sucked. And she says, real missionaries do. I'd be being a fake missionary if I didn't say that. And I'm like, nah, I'm not sure that's true. But she's an MTC. She will be a different young woman in a year and a half, I bet you.
It's a different MTC than when we were young.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to make it fun, which is probably a positive thing when they're stuck at home doing it on a computer all the time. But
yeah,
I don't know. All right, it's very different. But there's not unlimited cereal unless your dad buys it for you. So that's the downside. All right, so we'll start with this first concept, which sort of like confuses or is easy to get confused on, I guess. And this concept of determining the ownership of goods. So there's two ways, I guess, that we try to figure out who owns the goods at a specific time and who pays for the freight. Okay, and the terms are FOB shipping point and FOB destination. FOB stands for freight on board. And so when we say something is freight on board or FOB shipping point, what we mean is when the seller puts the goods on on board on the carrier when they send it, okay, like if it's UPS or however they're shipping it, the minute the seller releases that to the public carrier, it becomes the property of the buyer. So FOB shipping point, ownership changes hands as soon as the seller puts it on board the shipper's vehicle and they take it, okay? And so as you can imagine, in a scenario like that, the buyer is responsible for freight costs because while it's in transit, it belongs to the buyer. So that means at the moment the seller hands it over to, let's say, UPS, they're going to reduce that or take it out of their inventory. They're going to credit their inventory account for that. Why did I just draw a blank on the term? That merchandise inventory. The other is FOB destination. And what that means is once the public carrier, so let's say UPS, gets to the buyer's place, then it becomes the property of the buyer. So if you're doing FOB destination, the seller will leave it on their books all the way till they get confirmation it's been delivered, and that's when they will take it off of their books, and the buyer will add it to theirs. So there's going to be some questions, maybe you've already seen them, where it's kind of like trying to get to work out the minutia of these two concepts. Recognize that if it's FOB destination, meaning it doesn't change ownership until it gets to the destination, then the seller pays the freight cost because it's their property all the way through. This comes up a lot, believe it or not, in law too, right? Like whose insurance company should have to pay for something if the carrier has an accident? Well, hopefully it's the carrier's insurance, but for some, so knowing how things are being shipped matters from a legal sense as well as from an accounting sense. So whenever we're dealing with merchandise inventory, it's really important to recognize who we are in the transaction. In other words, let's say I'm a merchandiser, a regular retail store, then in some transactions, I'll be acting as a purchaser. I'll be buying goods from my supplier. And in other transactions, I'll be acting as the seller. I'll be selling goods to my customers. And so when we're trying to make the proper recording of the transaction and the accounting record, it's really important. In real life, it's like super easy to know because you know whether you're buying or selling something. But in a class, it's not as, it's like they're giving you this canned book problem, right? It's like a big giant word problem. You know, you love the giant word problems. That's why you took accounting. And so you have to like figure out from the context clues or from, you know, just terminology, oh, I happen to be the seller in this scenario, or I happen to be the buyer in this scenario. And that's going to impact what you're doing. So it's just that I always like try to ask myself that, like the first thing is I'm looking at it, okay, am I the buyer or the seller? Because that helps me sort of lock in what's happening. All right. Any questions about FOB shipping point or FOB destination?
So I noticed that in some of the problems, you're the buyer and the seller at different points of what it's stating in the questions. Yeah,
so that's a good point, right? So the nice thing about accounting is we take it transaction by transaction. So I have to sort of analyze that in each given transaction. In fact, I think one of the common challenges of accounting is to not be too global. You know, some people are very global thinkers, which really serves them well in certain areas. But in accounting, it's like, no thinking globally. Think one line item at a time and don't think too hard about it, you know. Anyway, so yeah, that's a good point. In a single problem, the perspective will change. Am I the buyer or the seller in this given transaction? All right, so there's a few methods we use when we're trying to figure out. So here's the real issue at hand. If I have a bunch of inventory and I'm selling it to people, how do I know which item I'm selling? And so there's a couple of methodologies. The first one is called specific identification. This is where we really do know exactly which item we're selling. So we know exactly how much each item cost us, and we know, and we have some way of specifically identifying the item. Automobile retailers, right? So like dealerships, they use this. They have a VIN number for every car they have on the lot, and they could pull up and tell you exactly what their cost was to purchase it, plus any cost to get it ready for sale if it's a used car. So on specific identification, it's pretty easy. You know when you purchase it how much it costs you, and you know when you sell it which ones you're selling and what their cost was. So their example on this one is Cribbets TV Company purchases 3 identical 50-inch TVs. There's the prices, 7, 750, 800. During the year, they sell 2 sets for 1,200 each. And then those facts are summarized below. So in this scenario, you would know which TVs you're selling if they were the ones that cost 700 or the ones that cost 750 or the ones that cost 800. So I think specific identification is the easiest method because in a word problem, it just has to tell you these are the ones you're selling. But if you are a retailer that sells a whole bunch of essentially identical product, you know, if you're Walmart and you're selling cans of corn, you know, the SKU, the little barcode is going to be the same on all those cans, even though you may have bought some of them for 50 cents and then some for 52 cents and then some for, you know, as the supplier's prices change, they're going to pass those on to you. So when you can't specifically identify, or when it just becomes impractical to specifically identify which item you're selling and what its cost is, we use one of these 3 methods to estimate. So, you know, if you haven't figured out yet, accounting has way more estimating in it than you thought. I think when I first started into it, I thought, oh, it's numbers and everything's black and white, but there's tons of gray area because, you know, even, you know, when we talked about depreciation, and we say, well, what's the useful life of the asset? I don't know. Is a car good for 5 years? Is it good for 3 years? Is it good for 8 years? Is it good for 100,000 miles or 300,000 miles? It depends on a lot of things. And so we have to make an estimate. Same thing here, first in, first out, we're going to make an estimate. So, I mean, its name tells you everything you need to know about it. Our assumption is, and it's an assumption, is that the first goods we buy are going to be the first goods we sell. Okay. And so I'm just going to kind of step through this example. So you see they have a beginning inventory, and then they made a bunch of purchases, and then they have some sales. Okay. So again, we've got, the question is, Oh, no, they don't show any sales. Okay, so let me just talk through the idea. So if we made a sale on April 16th, the question would be like, let's say we sell 150 units on April 16th. So right here in between these two purchases, we sell some. The question is, are we selling our $10 units, the ones that cost us $10, or are we selling $11 units? And if we don't have any way of specifically identifying them, we just have to make a reasonable guess. So the first in, first out method would tell us what we're going to do is assume if I sold 150 units, I'm going to assume that I sold all of my oldest units first, all 100 of those, and then the next 50 is going to come out of the newer units. Okay. And I almost feel like this is something that people overcomplicate in their heads sometimes, when really that's all we're saying is when I make a sale, I'm going to sell the oldest units first. That's it. So then at the end of the period, it'll be my newest units that are still there in inventory. So I can figure out my cost of goods sold. So if I sold 150 units on April 15th, I'll think I sold 100 units at $10 plus 50 units at 11. So my total cost would be 1,000 plus 550. And then my remaining inventory is going to be all these other units that I haven't sold. So just remember on first in, first out, when you're calculating cost of goods sold, it legitimately, without trying to sound silly about it, it's just the cost of the goods you sold, which would be the oldest units. And your ending inventory would just be the cost of the units that you haven't sold yet, the ones that are still there. So I don't know, first of all, is it like everybody's like, no, we totally understand this, so I don't even know why you're explaining it, or was that helpful? Or it's so hard to get feedback over Zoom, right? It's not the same as being in a classroom where people are like nodding, like, oh, I got you, or looking at their phone because they already got it figured out.
I think with first in, first out, my mind immediately when I started doing this went to exactly what you said. The first portion of your inventory is the first going out. But when it came to unit cost, it was the last dollar amount. So that kind of threw me in the beginning because I automatically thought first in, first out, you take your first end of your unit cost, but you really don't on the homework that we did. Is that right?
Well, so an important question you have to figure out when you're answering the questions in the homework is it asking me for the cost of the units I sold, the cost of goods sold, or is it asking me for the remaining inventory or the ending inventory? And I think people get confused by that sometimes because they're thinking first in, first out. So I'm just going to go with the first ones. And that's true if you're talking about the cost of goods sold. But if you're being asked what's the ending inventory, then it's going to be the last ones because those are the ones that you haven't yet sold. Does that make sense?
Yes,
was it helpful at all? I don't know.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say another way of looking at it is like rotating your food storage.
Yeah, first in, first out. And so that's why a lot of places that sell perishable items, they use first in, first out because they feel that's how they try to sell stuff, right?
Yep.
If you've ever worked in a retail store, you've probably pulled stuff out to the front of the shelf and put new stock back in the back for that very reason.
Well, and I like how it says in the helpful hints that the last in is still here.
Right. Good. So last in, first out is the opposite. And so the types of businesses that use this are often businesses that sell technology-based items because there's a sort of, the items aren't perishable, but the resale value drops pretty dramatically. When an iPhone 12 comes out, the iPhone XR is worth a lot less. And so they tend to consider that they're trying to sell the new stuff first. That's how some businesses work. So same idea, except in reverse. So here, we would assume if we made a sale, so let's say on April 16th, same scenario, we sell 150 units. Our question would be like, well, which 150 units did we sell? Did we sell $11 units or $10 units? Because we don't have these ones yet on April 16th. And so if we made a sale of 150 units on April 16th, the assumption would be that all 150 of them were these $11 units. And our remaining inventory at that point would be 50 of these $11 units plus all 100 of the older units. And so again, under a last in, first out scenario, so at the end of the month, let's say, under a last in, first out scenario, our ending inventory is going to be the oldest units, right? Because those are the ones that haven't been sold yet. So they're still sitting there in inventory to be counted. And our cost of goods sold will be based on the newest units at the time of the sale. And again, any thoughts or questions on that? I liked it on the last time I asked for questions, actually, we had some good thoughts that helped, you know, your way of learning it. That was, I think, helpful. We're good. Yeah, and we might do best to, you know, get through this and then look at specific questions that people have. So under the average cost method, so here's the thing. So with first in, first out and last in, first out, they create, depending on if costs are rising or falling, they create scenarios where you'd be better off to be doing one or the other if you were trying to maximize costs and minimize your tax burden, or if you were trying to do the opposite and maximize your, minimize your costs to maximize your profit. And so as the cost of the product you're buying from suppliers is going up and down, there'll be times when you're in an advantageous position because you're using cost of goods, or you're using first in, first out, and times when you won't be. And so a lot of businesses have taken to using an average cost method, because what it does is it's the most, if you think about some of the principles of accounting, we want to be as conservative as possible. So finding an average or a middle ground is the most conservative way really to estimate what was the cost of what we sold. Okay. So under the average cost method, what we're doing is at any time we make a sale, at that point, we're simply just adding up our total cost at that point, dividing it by the number of units we have, and that gives us an average cost. And then we're using that average for our accounting. So for example, if we sold these units on April 16th, what we would do is add up the total cost as of April 16th, which would be $3,200. And then we divide that by the total number of units at that time, which would be 300 units. And that would be $10.67. And that's what we would use for our costs for those units we sold on the 15th. Then when we get down to the end of the month, we would say, okay, of all the units we still have sitting there in inventory, what's their total cost divided by the number of units, and that's the average cost of the units in inventory at the end of the month. And so rather than trying to make this guess, was it my first ones I sold or my last ones? In essence, what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to take all of the units we have on hand as a whole group, and then we'll divide the cost by that number, and we'll have an average cost, and we'll apply that across all of them. Okay. And then each time we purchase, we'll recalculate a new average, and then we'll use that average for sales until we make another purchase, and then we'll recalculate. This has gained popularity, of course, in the last 50 years because computers can do all the heavy lifting for you. Back when people were doing it by hand, they used first in, first out, or last in, first out more often because you didn't have to recalculate every time you made a purchase. Kind of do though. Then you had to calculate every time you made a sale. So I don't know. Computers make nice life better. Okay, we could probably all agree on that one. Questions about average cost? All right. So that's kind of the only little presentation piece I had. And so I wanted to open the time up for like maybe specific homework questions or quiz questions that you're struggling with, or not even struggling with, that maybe you just had a question about, or anything else. And I did have one person email me and say they couldn't be here tonight, but wondered if I would address or look at a certain problem. I think it was 6-9A, exercise 6-9A. So we can maybe do that too. Anything we should look at? Or is this chapter so easy we're good?
6-9A is a good one. The problem, right? Is that what you said?
Let me look. So it was, she says exercise 6-9.
Okay. Well, then I'll just add problem 6-9A. It's on the same homework 2.
Okay, so let me pull it up.
That one's a doozy. I think I spent a good hour doing that one.
You know, and I think like it was one of the ones on the homework support, right?
It is, and that's I went through that, paused it, and I probably reworked it 3 or 4 different times. But I mean, I would not have gotten through it had you not had that on the homework support.
But I think only like 1 or 2 people actually successfully posted that one because it was probably because it was just a bear of a problem.
It definitely is, but then once I think after I did the first 2, by the 3rd one rework, I actually kind of just stopped watching the video and kind of I felt a little bit more confident doing it. So
Sure.
it's definitely it's a doozy.
I like that I just said it was a bear of a problem, which is like something I never say, but like something my mother would say. So that's cool. Apparently I'm now 70 instead of in my 40s.
Oh yeah.
My mom's like, that's a real bear of one. And I'm like, okay, Mom. And I like when my kids say, okay, boomer. And I'm like, that make my mom's a boomer. I'm just like this lost child of a middle generation or something. Let's see. So here's 6-9A Wild Horse Company. I don't even know what they sell, but I'm interested just because they're called Wild Horse. They began operations on July 1st. They used a perpetual inventory system during July. They had the following purchases and sales. Okay. So was it Jessica? Was it this first section A1, like start at the top, or was there a specific area where you were?
Yeah, A1.
Okay. So here's what I'm gonna do. Just because it helps me, I'm gonna bring out my trusty old friend Excel here. Some people say a dog is a man's best friend, but not me. My dogs just jump on me when I try to feed them. Excel, it always gives me consistent outputs if I give it consistent inputs. That's love to me. So let's see. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah. All right. So it says calculate the average cost for each unit. So on July 1st, I have 13 units at a cost of $115. And so my average cost is just going to be $115 on that first day. Okay. If I want to, I can figure out total cost, which is going to be the number of units times the average cost per unit. And then my average, which is going to be my total cost divided by the number of units, which again, I didn't really have to do that on the first day. So then on July 6th, I sell 9 units. So on July 6th, I'm going to say 13 minus 9. So now I've got 4 units. My cost per unit is still $115. So if I want to, I can calculate this out. 4 times 115. This is more of a proof than a calculation. And then my average cost is going to be to take the total cost divided by the number of units, which should still be 115. Everybody following me so far? It'll get more awesomer in a minute here on July 11th. My dad's birthday. All right. So on July 11th, I'm going to say that I'm going to go ahead and say that I have 4 units with an average cost of 115, and I've got, those are the ones left over from July 6th. And then I'm purchasing 6 more units with a cost of 123. So now I'll say this equals the number of units, 4 times the cost of 115. And these 6 units times the cost of 123 Whoops. So now I can do a total as of that date on July 11th. The total cost is $11.98. My total number of units is 10. So my average cost on July 11th is going to be my total cost divided by my number of units, or $119.80. I did that pretty fast. Are we good? I don't have your pictures up, so I can't see if people are like nodding. Just totally interrupt me if I'm like rambling on, thinking that I'm being so smart and showing you good things, and you're like, I have no idea what you just did. Come on, Fox. All right. So on July 14th.
Did you take that units column there and just take July 11th, and that's where you got your total? You didn't take that whole column, right? You just took the July 11th units and then totaled them at the bottom there.
Right. Yeah. So like that. So it's just, this is just
Gotcha.
July 11th totals. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I didn't know where the 10 came from when I was looking at that column.
Okay. So on the 14th now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I sold 6 units. So if I want to make this really easy, I might go -6. And they're all with this average cost of $119.80. So now I'm going to have four units at a cost of $119.80. Again, if I want to, I could calculate it out. I think what we can recognize here is anytime we sell units, it doesn't impact our average cost, right? The average cost just gets impacted when we buy. And so, but if we wanted to, we could take our total cost, divide that by the number of units, and we'd end up the same with $119.80. All right, so let's go to July 21st. So on July 21st, I'm going to go ahead and say we started with 4 units at a cost of $119.80, and then we purchased another 7 units at a cost of $132 each. I'll multiply those out, so this equals 4 units times $119.80, and this equals 7 units times $132. I'll get my total. So as of that date, I have a total cost of $1,403.20, and I have a total number of units of 11. So to find my average cost, I'll just take that total cost, divide it by the number of units, and now I'm at $127.56. Okay, so some of you may have found that this thing is really finicky in its rounding, because like up here, I have 479.2, and actually that is something I've calculated. Let's see. Sometimes Excel can just be, we'll take it to more decimals than what our calculator, because you'll see right here, this has 127.55 as our answer. And so typically they allow a small margin of error, but I've heard of people getting frustrated by this because they have the answer right within like a penny, and it's not rounding. But that's the process. Did that help at all with the concept behind finding the average cost?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just a lot more steps than you'd think, you know what I mean? Like, because you have to subtract and then you have to add and the units, and so it's a lot.
Yeah, and no matter how you do it, I mean, like the bottom line is you have to know the total cost and the total number of units you have at that moment, and then you can calculate the average, right? Like, so it's almost like it's not that hard, but there's a bunch of little steps that are all not that hard, but getting them all together in the right order is pretty easy to screw up, you know.
Yeah, I would have loved to have that chart, but like yours on Excel, where we could have filled in the 4 and the 6, you know, on the units, and you know, because from what we're looking at, it's like kind of just like weird blanks. And so for a long time, I just stared at it. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And I'm like, okay, sales unit. That means that on July 6th, they sold 10. Like, it took me like a minute to figure that out. So I don't know. Like,
what they're even looking for, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like it was like like more complicated just because of the appearance of it. I don't know.
No, I totally agree. And I've said that over and over, that like accounting in real life is easier than textbook accounting, because in real life, you know what you're trying to do. Like there's not some question of like, I'm looking at your weird format and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It's like,
Exactly.
I just know I sold stuff and I need to figure out what it costs now.
Yeah, because I can definitely find an average of a number.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
the math is pretty easy. It's just trying to figure out what math am I doing? Adding, subtracting?
And what do you want in your little box, Wiley Plus?
Oh,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, Jessica, I followed his video and it took me so long to do the problem because I would pause and I would set up everything on Excel how he showed in his video example. And it kind of made it a little bit easier. That way, I can have an idea of how to put it in Excel if something like this comes up on the exam, which I hope it doesn't.
So yeah, there is a video of a B version of this problem in the additional study resources, I believe. Is that right, Leilani? Is that who's, or Monica, who was? Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
there is. I watched it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So that can help too. I mean,
Yes.
but it is like, like I totally recognize that you guys have like lives, right? And so you hit some point where you're like, Jessica's trying to hold a sleeping baby while she's attending her meeting. And so like, I'm going to take another hour to watch that video. Is challenging.
The reason why I had time is I'm in Houston. So we, the apocalypse has happened here this past week. So there was a couple days that I couldn't get to work. And so I had the time. I'm not gonna
Do you think
lie.
there's people in Michigan right now going like, amateurs?
Yeah,
and yet,
I'm here during hurricane season and tell me how you feel.
Well, and just that your infrastructure there is just
it's completely different. Yes,
right.
but,
It's just not set up for it.
We're sensitive Sallies here, so we don't handle things very well.
No, like in Arizona where I live, we don't like put insulation on a lot of our pipes. We just have exposed pipe outside. You couldn't have that, even in Utah. So it's just part of what it got down into the 50s this week here in Arizona in the daytime. It was in the 30s at night and people were crying. Okay. So
I understand.
My house was 50 inside.
I understand a blizzard in Arizona is Dairy Queen.
That's right. That's the only blizzard we have. And then, somebody just said in the chat, it's -40 up there in Canada where they are. But I bet your water system and your gas piping system, and I bet people even have oil heaters in their trucks and cars and stuff because you're set up for it. Do we want to look at A2, the next part of it, or are we tired of this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
But I think the last one, we can skip B though. But A2,
Okay.
yes, let's do it.
All right, so A2. Let's see. Of course, it's a weird fit.
I think something that I find hard is in the textbook, it's like, well, let's use the periodic because that's the easy thing. And then they ask you to do it in the, whatever it is, the other one. And I was like, really? Could you not have shown us how to do that one?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is like nobody uses not nobody, but like periodic systems just they're hardly used at all anymore. That's because point of sale systems like QuickBooks Point of Sale or more expensive ones have gotten cheaper and cheaper. And so I know like where I teach this full time, I almost exclusively focus on perpetual and just sort of introduce the idea of a periodic system because we don't use it much. But for some reason, BYU is pretty heavy on it, right?
Yeah, well, I wish that the textbook would focus more on the perpetual because they use the periodic when they're showing you how to do the FIFO and the LIFO. And I was like, really? Because I know you're going to ask me to do the perpetual.
Right. So let's take a look at this. Whoa, that was weird. Okay, it's being weird. I know Wiley Plus isn't usually weird. It's always easy to get along with, but okay, it's doing it again. Let go of my. Okay. That was pretty freaky. Determine the ending inventory under a perpetual inventory system using first in, first out, moving average, and last in, first out. Okay, so again, we're having to look at all this data from up here. And so the way I would go about doing this, so let's just start with first in, first out. So remember, in first in, first out, our remaining inventory is the stuff we have there at the end, and our beginning inventory is, or our cost of goods sold is what we sold. So on a first in, first out method, again, I'm going to start with July 1st, and I'm going to say I had 13 units that cost $115. And then on July 6th, I sold 9 units. So my remaining inventory at the end of July 6th is going to be 13 minus 9, which is 4 units. The cost, I accidentally did 116 there. I didn't mean to confuse you. I'm sorry. So this is my balance as of July 6th. Then on July 11th, I'm going to purchase 6 units that are, sorry. For me, I have to say, I'm going to bring it down and say, okay, on July 11th, then at the start of that day, I had 4 units at 115, and I purchased 6 more at 123. And then on July 14th, I sold 6 units. So I'm going to ask myself, which units did I sell? And if it's first in, first out, I sold actually all 4 of my $115 units, plus 2 of my $123 units. So at the end of July 14th, I'm left with 4 units that all cost $123. And there might be an easier way, like maybe you can do this in your head, but not me. I just go through it step by step, and that's how I can keep it. So on July 21st, I started with 4 units at 123, and I purchased 7 more units at 132. And then on July 27th, I sold 6 units. Again, the question is, which ones did I sell? If I sold the oldest ones first, I sold all 4 of the $123 units, plus 3 more of the $132 units. So I'm left with 4 of the $132 units at the end of the period. All right, so the question is, what is my ending inventory? So my ending inventory is 4 units that cost $132. Or wait, what did we do wrong? So somewhere I must have made an error, right? Because the correct answer is supposed to be 660. So I started with 13 at 115. I sold 9, leaving me with 4 at 115. Then I purchased 6 at 123. So now I have 4 at 116. And then on the 14th, I sold 6 units, which should have been all 4 of the older ones, plus 2 of those. Oh wait, that's where I made the mistake. No, 6 minus 2. So I had 4. What's that?
July 27th. I think it says you have 7 units you sold.
Oh, so on July 27th, I sold all 4 of the old units and then only 2 of those.
Yeah, it should. Yeah.
Leaving me with 5 of the 132s. And there's my 660. So thank you. I guess I saw this 7 or something, but we only sold 6. All right. Does that process make any sense at all?
Other than when I do my homework and I don't find my error that quickly, trust, it takes a while.
Well, I didn't find it. Someone else found it for me. Maybe all you need to do is have 10 people watch you do your homework, and one of them will be like, hey, dummy, that's the one you missed.
No, it's just because I made lots of errors yesterday and I was working through it. And so trying to figure it out, going through it, you started from the top. So I was going through the bottom, and that's where I found it.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah.
do we want to do last in, first out as well? Talk through that. I feel like I'm taking too long and I hope I'm not boring you really, but I don't mind going through it at all.
Yeah, the last in, first out is that one I have the hardest time with in the perpetual.
Okay, so let's try it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start over here. I'm going to say on the beginning of the month, I had 13 at 115. Then on the 6th, I sold 9 units. Whoops, minus 9 at 115. So that one's always easy because there's only one price, right? So at that point, I have 4 at a cost of 115. Then on the July 11th, oh, don't do that to me. Then on July 11th, I started with 4 at 115 and I purchased 6 more at 123. So up to this point, it's identical, right? With first in, first out, because we haven't had to make any decisions about what we're selling. Now on July 14th, we're going to sell 6 units. So the question is, which 6 units are we selling? And the answer is, it's these 6 newest ones. Okay, so that's going to leave us with, I'll do this. We're selling all 6 of the 123s, which leaves us with 4 of the 115s. So moving into July 21st, I've got 4 that I paid 115 for. And then on July 21st, we purchased 7 more units at a cost of 132. And then on July 27th, we're selling 6 units. Which 6? We're going to sell the newest ones. So we're going to sell 6 of these 132s, which means we're going to have 4 at 115 and 1 at 132. And that's going to be our ending inventory. So under first in, first out, we were left with 5 units that we said cost 132. Under last in, first out, we're left with 5 units still, but 4 of them that we're saying cost 115 and 1 that cost 132. So our ending inventory is just going to be, whoops, 4 times 115 and 1 times 132, and then we add them up. And that's the value of our ending inventory. Is that good?
Thank you. Yep, thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, good. Do the average too? All right, let's do it. Because it's fun. Accounting is fun. Said nobody ever, right? I always tell my students here at Eastern Arizona College that accounting is like 40-year-old sexy, but it's not 18-year-old sexy. Like, it's not the excitement of being 18 and like having the coolest job on earth. But when you're 40 and you're making 120 grand a year for a 9-to-5 job, that's pretty sexy, right? Like, that's the difference. When you get until tax season, then it's not so fun. All right, so we start with 13 at 115. So again, our total cost on that first one is just going to be the number of units times the cost per unit, and then our average is going to be the total cost divided by the total number of units. Again, we don't have to do that this first one. We know it's going to come out to 115. On the 6th of July, we sell units. So I'm going to say I had 13 minus 6. So now I have 7 units that cost 115. There's my total and my average. On July 11th, I purchased 6 more units. Okay, so on July 11th, I'm going to say I've got 7 units. So I'm going to just bring down the 7 units at 115. And then I'm going to show my purchase of 6 more units at 123. And then I'll find my total cost, which is the 805 plus the 738 my total units. And then my average cost per unit, so this is going to be my total cost divided by the total number of units on that day. Okay, it's saying that it should be 119.80. Is going to find my error now. Let's see. 7 units at 115 is 805.
You're working for the whole thing.
Oh, okay. And yeah, I'm looking at the, yeah, sorry, our answer is all the way down here too. I was looking there and I was like, why is that number off? Okay, so we don't even need to find our average. Well, we are going to need it to find. So we're, on July 14th, then I've got 13 units and I'm selling 6. So really, I'm just going to say 13 minus 6. Okay, there's 7 units left at a cost of 118.69. And then on July 21st, I purchased 7 more units. So I'm going to bring down the 7 I have. You know, I'm going to still need the total cost of that, aren't I? That's, sorry guys, I'm trying to skip steps to make it faster because I feel like I've got you on here too long. So I apologize for that. 7 at 118.69, which equals 7 times that. And I'm purchasing another 7 at 132. So then I'll add those up to get my total cost. And I'll add that up to get my total units. And I'll find an average cost of 125.35, I guess. And then on the 27th, I'm going to sell 6 of those units. So now I'll have 14 minus 6 units left in inventory times my average cost of 125.35. And that'll give you my ending inventory. What do they want from us? How far off do we get with? Oh, that's not right. What did I do wrong? So I screwed that up pretty big, didn't I? Let's see. Started with 13 units at 115. Then I sold 6 of them, which left me 7 at 115. And then on July 11th, I purchased 6 more at 123. So there's my total cost, my total number of units, which gives me an average cost. Then on the 14th, I sold 6 of those units, taking me back down to 7, that same average cost. And then on the 21st, I purchased 7 more. And that gives me 14 units. I feel like I'm missing something really obvious here. Because that average cost looks like it should be in the ballpark, you know, if you think about what we're paying for them. So where am I getting this wrong here? We sold 6
Did we
units.
do that? Yeah, did you sell the 6 at the end on the 27th?
Yeah. You
What
sold
did I come up
6.
with?
You
So
said
July-
7.
So I had 13. See, that's what I had 13.
Mhm.
I sold
9.
9. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. I screwed this up. So that's the first place. So I had 4 left. And then I had 4. And on July 11th, I have to start with 4.
And purchase 6.
I purchased 6. Yeah. Purchase 6. So then I have 10, they add up to 119.80. Then on July 14th, I sold 6. So that, yeah, I see what I did here. I screwed that up. So now I have 4 left at 119.80, which is actually what matches up with up here, right? Honestly, if I wanted to cheat this, I could just say I know it was 127.55 at the end, and I have 5 units left, right? So I could just multiply that out.
You're not working for that problem.
Yeah, it is. It's all the same problem. So actually, as I'm making these corrections, these numbers you'll see are now matching up with what they were over here.
But is that going to give us the moving average?
It will, yeah, because this is the average cost for each. That's what they had us do in A1. Anyway, so now at July 14th, I had 4 units after that sale at 119.80 each. Then on July 21st, I purchased 7 units. I purchased 7 units
At 119.80.
at 132.
Nope, 119.80.
No, that's not what I purchased them for.
No, on the 14th, you sold 6.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, that's what got me down to this 10 or this 4. So this is where I am on the 14th. On the
Okay.
21st, whoo. You guys, for a moment, you were doubting if I was human. You thought this guy's an accounting god with a little g. But now you know. Now you know. Now you know that I am.
You're human.
Pretty fallible here. I'm pretty sure you never doubted that. But so on the 21st, I'm going to have my 4 units at 119.80. Plus, I purchased 7 more at 132. All right. Yes. Everybody's like, thanks. Now I'm more confused. Thanks a lot, buddy. So on the 21st, my total cost, my total number of units, so my average cost per unit, and I don't know why it wants it rounded at 127.55. So then on the 27th, I sell 6, which means I'm still, now I just have 5 units. At 127.56. And it wants my ending inventory, so I'm just going to take those 5 units times that amount, which again, I think it's going to be off because of their rounding, because they want it at 127.55. So I've got 637.80 and they've got 638. So actually it comes out fine if they want it to the nearest dollar. All right, I apologize for that. I just got mixed up in there. But like I was saying, because up here they had us calculate the moving average, if we know this is our average cost at July 27th, and we know from first in, first out and last in, first out that we have 5 units at the end, we could just take 5 units times that 127.55 and could have saved all that work. But sometimes the work is where we start to understand the process too. All right, so now that did that make it worse or did it help? It's okay.
I think it helped me. So
sometimes when you see someone make a mistake and fix it, it helps. Other times it's just confusing.
yeah. Yeah, no, I thought it was helpful. And now I'm wondering, now that I know how to do it, is this going to be on the test? Like, I know it won't be that in depth, right? But we will have questions
But
like
yeah,
that.
you might anticipate something like like that. That's like, what's the ending inventory of this?
And so we'd go through all those steps. Okay.
Yeah,
With less
right.
dates. Hopefully
It
with
doesn't
less
seem very
dates.
nice, does it?
Yeah. I wish I could have like little notes, like, remember when they ask about this? This is when you do that big chart where you add and subtract, you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes I get confused with what are they asking again? But anyway, this was helpful. It was, even the mess ups were helpful.
Well, you're welcome. I'll try to mess up for you as much as I possibly can. Anyway, so I apologize, guys, that took so long and that there was some stumbles in there. Let's see.
Question while we're talking
Somebody,
about what's on the test. Can you hear me okay?
yes,
Are we allowed to use Excel sheets during the Proctor exam? I wasn't clear on that.
yes.
So we can go minimize the screen and go to an Excel sheet and work on that
You,
during a proctored exam.
It has it in the upper left-hand corner. You can just click on Excel and it pulls it up.
During the Proctor,
Mhm.
it's inside that screen? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. It also has a chat feature, and I haven't figured why that one's there.
have you tried chatting with anybody? It's like phone
Not
a
yet.
friend.
Maybe I will.
Yeah, I've used Excel on that past couple proctored exams just to do the math or, kind of create whatever type of template I needed to get
Yeah,
through it.
and I wish, maybe it's something I need to in future courses like address super early, because I think a lot of people are freaked out by Proctorio. It just feels like, like Big Brother's watching you or something. Or honestly, all it does is it monitors your eyes. And if you're looking it down and away too often, it puts a little flag in there. And then I get a little email that says, hey, this person was looking away a lot, and pull up the video. And then I could see like clearly your kid ran in and you were dealing with your kid and you weren't cheating. And so like it's not as powerful, I think, as people think. It just flags things and says, and honestly, if you think of the exams you've taken to this point, and you probably had things where you had to look away or deal with things, I have yet to get a flag on your class. So it's not like the moment you look away, it's flagging you, and it's just meant to catch people that are like blatantly cheating.
That
Looking.
have the notes in front of their face that aren't supposed to have the notes.
Oh no, we've got people with it, and you like. It's sort of, I've had people like that bring up Google right on there while they're taking the test, and it flags that too, right? If you open other windows and you pull it up and you can watch them Google the question, and you're going, what? Like, why?
Yeah.
But I guess
I look down a lot, but that's because I have a lap pad, I think, over, or whatever it's called, to pull out my keyboard. And I like to look at my hands when I type. So I'm always looking up and then back and forth, but I guess I've never been flagged. So
no, because that's normal behavior. It's when somebody's like down here flipping through pages, or something like that, that you're like, that was my one blank sheet of scratch paper that I was flipping through. Okay, whatever. People, it's just people, right? Anyway, so are we good? We have anything else? It's 7, which doesn't necessarily mean anything other than it's been an hour, and usually people's attention span lasts about 42 minutes. So we might be getting tired.
So
Sherry?
I noticed
Oh.
on the extra questions that you have, self-help, I think things in the extra stuff that you post at the bottom, there's a second exam, and that has like turnover ratio and all that. Is all that going to be on there, or is it mostly just the LIFO, FIFO, and averages?
There's a second exam.
The second,
Might be like the second self-assessment. Is that what you're talking
yeah,
about?
the second self-assessment.
Um,
There's a lot of stuff on there. I thought, well, I don't remember reading about that, but and it was turnover ratio and what's it called? The inventory turnover, and then the days of inventory outstanding.
So that is covered in this chapter, which means it's fair game on the exam. Let's take a look real quick at the exam study guide and make sure that, let's see, that's exam 2.
For this one, there wasn't a practice exam.
Right, but there's still the,
Yeah, but there's nothing on that.
no, there's the checklist right here. So let's see. be able to calculate profit margin ratio, gross profit rate, gross profit, inventory turnover ratio, and days in inventory. Yeah, so those are
Okay.
those are on there. And again, if you're not using this checklist, I swear whoever made it was looking at the exam when they did and wrote out these little sections based on the questions.
Okay.
So I think it's a good thing to review, to just focus your study. You know, a lot of times you'll read through it and say, oh, like 8 of those things I feel pretty good on. But these 3 I really need to maybe practice or go over.
Okay, thank you.
Sherry, were you, I thought you would, oh, she may have had to step away. I thought that you were about to say something a minute ago when I was asking if there was anything else.
No, I was throwing car keys at my son.
Oh, okay. Was it a good throw?
He caught them, so
Okay.
that's good.
Yeah.
Didn't break anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully he won't break the car. It's a sheet of ice out there on the roads right now. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't want my kids driving on the ice. I don't like me driving on the ice, but I live in
No.
Arizona. So, all right, are we good for tonight, or any other specific questions? I saw a thumbs up from Stacy. That was like, for the love of all that is good and this meeting. All right, let's say a prayer and then get out of here. Any volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Thanks.
Our Father who art in heaven, we're so very grateful for the opportunity to learn new things and to have our minds grow and stretch. We pray that thou would please bless our minds with clarity and focus. Help us to prioritize our lives and to always do thy will. Please keep us safe. If it be thy will, Father, please help us to find an end to the pandemic and to be able to help each other to be a light to the world. We say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Brother Fox.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Jeff, I think we made you late to your other meeting.
I couldn't find the unmute, blocked it out. So you